with Chris Barth and Paul Gregg. This is 7 Nightly News.
Tonight, humanitarian disaster. 250,000 refugees on the move from Kosovo. NATO stepping up its bombing campaign but running out of missiles. And in sport, Brian Lara magnificent in one of the Windies' best test victories. Good evening. NATO is intensifying its bombing campaign against Yugoslavia as the crisis in Kosovo deepens. Up to 250,000 terrified refugees have fled their homes in the province. They've arrived in neighbouring countries telling of atrocities by Serb forces. Earlier today, Western leaders rejected a Serbian ceasefire offer as inadequate, and they say airstrikes will continue until President Milosevic agrees to peace in Kosovo.
Refugees wake in a freezing dawn. After trekking for kilometres, they were forced to wait at the Macedonian border, a few hundred metres from safety. Women warm a baby over a fire. An old woman sleeps on icy ground. The night claimed several lives, young children, an old man. Finally, they were let through, a column of misery snaking down the hillside. The whole population terrified victims of ethnic cleansing.
They are not fighting, they are just shelling, taking civilians, killing, burning, stealing.
Aid agencies just can't cope with the growing exodus.
It's devastating. Will these people be okay now? We don't know.
This woman walked for 6 hours across a mountain pass.
My house was burned down, the land burned, everything.
Bukaric's 2 sons escaped with her. Their father has joined Kosovo's rebel army. In Kosovo's capital, Pristina, Serb television showed thousands of Albanians leaving, abandoning their homes and livelihoods. The rebels say 20,000 men have been rounded up in Pristina's stadium. Impossible to confirm, but it sparked fears of a future massacre. In Belgrade, there were new moves for peace. Russia's Prime Minister Yevgeny Premykov met Serb President Slobodan Milosevic for 6 hours to hammer out a deal. But any hope faded after Serbia demanded an end to airstrikes before it would even consider withdrawing some of its troops. That's been flatly rejected by NATO.
The Allies are united in our outrage over President Milosevic's atrocities against innocent people. We are determined to stay with our policy.
Serbia denies its troops are on a murderous rampage, but these exhausted refugees tell a different story. Now nearing safety, many fear they may never see their homes or relatives again. In the European Bureau, Mara Pritchard, 7 Nightly News.
Australia will give $2 million to help Kosovo's refugees. Foreign Minister Alexander Downer says the money will be distributed through Care Australia, the Red Cross, World Vision and the United Nations. It's a week since NATO began airstrikes against Serbia, but the bombing doesn't appear to have made any real impact. Even this advanced technological age, bad weather has hampered some strikes, and now the US Air Force is running short of cruise missiles.
The opening salvo in the second wave, NATO ordering in more firepower. Here the target, Serbia's special police. But according to military intelligence, after flying 1,700 sorties, the overall damage to Serbian air defences, minimal to moderate.
We knew from the start that this was going to be difficult.
Britain's Harrier jump jets have been hampered by bad weather, interfering with their high-tech guidance systems. Pilots identify targets with laser, but even a thin layer of cloud can bounce the beam in almost any direction. When the missile is launched, it then misses, possibly straying into civilian areas. And so far, an easy job for Britain's early warning aircraft high above the war, monitoring Serbia's surface-to-air missiles. So far, few have been fired.
Roger.
In fact, there are now fears the best Operation Allied Force can do is contain the Serb army, establish a no-combat zone in Kosovo, patrolled indefinitely by NATO warplanes. In the United States, John Vors, 7 Nightly News.
2 Victorian men have died in the crash of an ultralight aircraft in northern New South Wales. It was being flown by the former mayor of Wangara.
The wreckage of the ultralight was discovered by rescue helicopters just east of Tenterfield.
Some 15 helicopters arrived here this morning. A search was conducted. and very, very early in the search, the aircraft was actually found.
The pilot was former Wangara Mayor Kevin Gleeson, who held the council's top position from 1990 to 1993.
The accident's an indication of the fact that he went out and grabbed life, pursued it.
The two-seater Jabiru went missing shortly after takeoff from the New South Wales town of Casino late yesterday, prompting an extensive air and ground search.
Heavily timbered with very, very high, tall hardwoods. You could turn up in the morning and it might be misty. By lunchtime it's cleared. By just after lunch, of course, it may well be misty again.
The Bureau of Air Safety is now investigating. Peter Morris, 7 Nightly News.
More violent clashes today between police and protesters at an anti-uranium rally in Melbourne. For the third day in a row, protesters tried to stop workers arriving at North Limited, the company that runs the Jabiluka mine. Mounted police tried to break up the demonstrators, but they kept reforming the blockade. One protester was arrested. The federal government is turning up the heat in its battle to push the goods and services tax through the Senate. It's now saying family tax concessions are at risk if Labor continues to block the legislation.
Under the government's legislation, parents would get a $2,000 increase in their tax-free threshold for every dependent child.
Well done. Another one.
For single-income families, the increase for children under 5 would be $5,000, with benefits up to $9,000. But there's a catch. The bonuses are dependent on revenue from the government's GST. With Labor blocking the GST in the Senate, the Treasurer says the choice is clear.
Now, if tax goes down, families won't get those benefits.
It's not only the government that's pressuring Labor to drop its opposition to the GST. Influential ALP figures now also believe it's time for Kim Beazley to deal himself into the tax debate. Among them, the architect of last weekend's landslide Labor victory in New South Wales, State Secretary John Della Bosca. He wants Mr Beazley to negotiate with the government to make the GST package fairer, rather than simply oppose it outright.
The dogs in your own party are barking on this, and a growing number of Australians regard you as the Dr. No of Australian politics.
But Labor's resisting.
On Tuesday at the caucus, there was absolute commitment to maintain our very strong position of opposing the GST.
In Canberra, Glenn Milne, 7 Nightly News.
Australia's official censor will review the classification of the controversial movie Lolita. The R-rated film is based on a classic Russian novel about the relationship between a man and his teenage stepdaughter. Now, the Office of Film Classification will check Lolita again to make sure it deserves to be aired. But that won't happen before the film's release next week. The rethink follows a federal MP's call for Lolita to be banned from Australian screens.
The audience is left in no doubt as to what the relationship is. It is clearly an incestuous and paedophilic relationship.
Ms Draper was one of 10 MPs who attended a special viewing of the movie in Canberra this evening. Melbourne researchers are using 20th century technology to unlock secrets from an ancient age. The mummified body of a little boy who died in Egypt 2,000 years ago underwent a CAT scan at the Peter MacCallum Institute today. Researchers are hoping to confirm the cause of death as a bad fall. And there's also a chance the intriguing case of a mummified head belonging to a boy aged about 8 may be solved. One theory is he died from a crocodile attack. Images show the creature's tooth still embedded in the tiny skull. We've been hearing for months about the Y2K bug and its dreaded impact on computers around the world. But New Year's Day 2000 may not be the only date to fear. Apparently, there's another less-known millennium bug ready to bite.
The latest face of the worldwide scramble to prepare for the millennium bug, Buddhist monks busy reprogramming. But it seems they, like us, may not be ready soon enough. Now, there's the September bug.
No, it's not urban myth because it's based on reality.
On September 9th, 1999, computers will see the date as 9999, in some program languages, an instruction to shut down. All adding to the year 2000 problem. New concerns too about the world's airports. Computer shutdowns might mean Australian flights will be forced to avoid certain countries and airspace.
When that kind of thing happens, we have to fly in a different direction.
The Federal Reserve is also braced for problems, ordering bucket loads of cash, fearing many people will want to empty their accounts before computer malfunctions do it for them.
We were doing 100% more than we'd normally do.
And the stock exchange has demanded all its 1,200 listed companies report to them with details of their Y2K preparations. But despite today's deadline, only half the companies have responded. Still, Australia's high on the list of countries that are making an effort. We're 85% compliant, but China is only 34% ready, India 50%, Russia also 34%. The fear there that weapons systems are at risk. NATO is sending inspectors to help. Chris Reason, 7 Nightly News.
Stay with us here on 7. Next, the train ride you don't want to take. And who's made Australia's entertainment rich list?
They did a bad, bad thing. They did a bad, bad thing.
Has been hit by a second earthquake in 3 days. Measuring 5 on the Richter scale, it sparked panic in Uttar Pradesh. The region's barely recovered from a major tremor on Monday, which killed at least 110 villagers. A series of aftershocks has hampered the search for more victims. The first quake was centred in a mountainous area 300 kilometres north of India's capital, New Delhi. It's cut electricity to the region, along with supplies of drinking water. In the United States, a young woman has survived a terrifying train ride she never intended to take. Her car became hooked on a speeding freight train. Her ordeal recorded as she phoned for help.
Amber Scott went from car driver to train terror victim in just seconds. Witnesses reporting her vehicle had wedged between a moving train and track.
A truck hit a car into a train. 2 vehicles, one pushed into a train. We can't even find the car that the other person was in.
For 7 frightening minutes, she was locked into the train ride from hell. Her own mobile call, evidence of the 50-kilometre-an-hour ordeal.
Where are you? Where are you?
What was left of Amber's car broke free at another crossing.
I think it's a miracle. I prayed to the Lord all the way down the track.
Remarkably, she suffered only bruising and has the T-shirt to prove it.
And it says Lucky Brand, and then at the very bottom it says Too Tough to Die.
Ross Dagan, 7 Nightly News.
A jury in the United States has awarded record damages against one of the world's best-known tobacco companies. Philip Morris has been ordered to pay more than $129 million to the family of a man who died of lung cancer. Jesse Williams was addicted to Marlboros. He smoked 3 packets a day for 40 years. The victory by Williams's wife and children is the second major decision against Philip Morris this year. A Californian jury awarded $82 million last month to a smoker with inoperable cancer. Romantic cover boy Fabio has scored a rather unusual birdie. Trouble struck as he helped to launch a new roller coaster ride. Going up was no problem for Fabio, but coming down was another story. Fabio returned to terra firma with blood all over his face. He and a wild goose had collided during the ride. He was taken to a local hospital for treatment to cuts on his nose. There's no word on the condition of the goose. Or the bird. Now, if you're interested in cars, here are a few that'll make you drool. This is BMW's new 3 Series Coupe. World debuts also by Audi, Ford, Saab and Infiniti. No big American cars overpower the event, but crowd pleasers include exotic and concept cars. And for those lucky people with a little spare cash, how about a new Aston Martin? To finance, and the Australian share market closed sharply lower today. The All Ordinaries down 28 points following an overnight dive on Wall Street. National Australia Bank went against the trend, up 15 cents, but the Commonwealth lost 46 cents, the ANZ down 22. Telstra dropped 17, AMP down 11 and Colonial lost 13. The Aussie dollar is worth 63 US cents, almost 76 yen, 39 pence and 0.58 euros. An ounce of gold is $279.85 US. London's FT100 up 35 points in early trading. Tokyo's Nikkei finished trading 22 points down, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng was slightly up. Two young men who dreamt of being pop stars are now officially Australia's richest entertainers. Also on the top 50 list, a pair of bananas, a soap star turned singer, and a man who made his money from a talking pig.
Never underestimate the power of pop. Savage Garden made a massive $35 million, and that makes the boys from Brisbane Australia's richest entertainers. A long way behind, but still at number 2, Sports Entertainment Limited. They made their $16 million with shows like The Main Event. Nicole Kidman's next on $15 million, then George Miller of Babe fame, and comedy producers Steve Vizard and Andrew Knight. Elsewhere, John Laws proved his microphone's still golden. He came in 6th on $11.6 million. The richest fruit in the world, B1 and B2, made the top 10 on a cool 11 mil. While a wiggle's worth just half that. There are 12 women in this year's top 50. Not surprisingly, Natalie Imbruglia is one of them. She earned $10.8 million and the number 8 spot. Noticeably absent is megastar Mel Gibson. It's not that he isn't making money, it's just that the judges say they can't include him on an Australian rich list when he said he'll never live here again.
My money, yes or no?
Sonia Wilkes, 7 Nightly News.
Paul Gregg off the bench with sport now, and Nicky Winmar has the final word.
He certainly has, Chris, on Seven's Live and Kicking. We'll have more on that next. Also tonight, Rod Laver's comeback and that incredible test win by the West Indies. Western Bulldogs star Nicky Winmar has spoken of the pain he and his family have suffered after Sam Newman mocked him by painting his face black. Winmar was a special guest on Seven's Live and Kicking tonight and says he's reached a truce with Newman over the incident.
2.5 hours of mediation produced this handshake, but no personal apology.
I'm happy to be party to that written statement.
Winmar also seemed uneasy with the deal, brokered by Bulldogs president David Smorgon and Eddie Maguire. Today, an unrepentant Newman was still steering clear of a personal apology.
But we read out a statement which was unanimously endorsed. Yes, it was unanimously endorsed.
You kind of get the impression that you're not happy about the whole thing.
Well, you'll have to work out what you think my impressions are about anything, mate.
I think it's about time that we are respected as footballers and as good footballers as well. And we need to show the public that, all jokes aside now, that everything is very, very serious, and we do take our football serious, and we need people to take us off the field very serious as well.
Other current and former AFL players have now bought into the dispute, North's Gary Durkay claiming he was offended. The league's vilification officer, Jim Stein, says Sam should apologise.
Why couldn't he just apologise for hurting Nicky and his kids and family?
And Newman has been named in the latest Business Review Weekly Top 50 Entertainers, earning $1.1 million in 1998. His TV partner, Eddie Maguire, topped that with $2.5 million. Mark Gilly, 7 Nightly News.
Meantime, Melbourne's Gary Lyon is almost certain to miss Sunday's clash with St Kilda. Lyon hasn't played for more than 6 months, and the Demons aren't taking any chances.
Lyon has not played since last year's preliminary final after missing the entire practice match series with a hamstring, and after training for just 20 minutes is rated no better than a 50-50 chance of playing this weekend.
You'd have to come up really well tomorrow for me to name him, or our selectors to name him in the squad.
Meantime, Essendon has brought in key tools Sean Wellman and Ilya Grigic for tomorrow night's clash with the Kangaroos. The Bombers virtually at full strength, and despite having beaten the Roos the last 3 times Wayne Carey has missed, aren't getting carried away.
And they've won so many games without Carey before. I mean, I don't think that's going to be a major focus from their point of view.
Geelong and the Western Bulldogs are set to strike a new trophy, the Feeler Cup, for Saturday's game at Optus Oval. The Cats hoping their tall forward line structure can make them inaugural winners.
We've got to work on what's going to be a strength for us. Everyone said that we had trouble kicking goals last year.
The Doggies, meanwhile, have lost Steve Collingwood for up to 14 weeks after he entered hospital today for back surgery. In other news, a last-minute building controls inspection tomorrow is expected to give Victoria Park the green light for AFL action next weekend. And Manchester United officials flew into Melbourne late today and are believed to have sealed a deal to play a game at the MCG in June. The soccer giant also hoping to strike a deal tomorrow for next year at Colonial Stadium. Craig Hutchison, 7 Nightly News.
A magnificent century from captain Brian Lara has given the West Indies a one-wicket win in the third test against Australia. Lara's unbeaten 153 has been described as one of the best knocks in test history and has given the Windies a 2-1 lead in the 4-match series.
In the stands, his disciples prayed for divine intervention and Brian Lara responded brilliantly. But then the Windies hit a hurdle, Hooper's demise making it 5 for 105. Then a full-scale assault by the Windies Terminator.
Hoisted that away again.
Our spin twins copping the full brunt of the Prince's fury.
Long hop and he's put that out of the ground.
It was enough to ignite McGrath's fuse. The pair had a heated exchange, but Lara wasn't intimidated.
That's his 100. Brian Lara hits it over the top.
McGrath took out his frustrations on Adams. It came down to the Windies needing 60 runs with only 2 wickets remaining. Ward directed the traffic while Ambrose and Lara dodged it, closing in on a stunning win. 7 runs for victory and a prize life for the danger man.
In the air, dropped.
Healy unable to glove what would usually be regulation, but still a glimmer as Ambrose fell. But Walsh managed to hold up his end of the deal as the skipper delivered the knockout blow.
Has won the match for the West Indies. The West Indies team run onto the oval.
Lara the toast of the Caribbean and an obvious man of the match.
It was a great team effort and we are looking forward to Antigua. We are looking forward to going and make this a 3-1 victory for West Indies.
Well, I think cricket was the winner. It was, I think, the best test match I've ever played in.
Jim Wilson, 7 Nightly News.
Well, 8 months after suffering a stroke, tennis legend Rod Laver is back at work. He's coaching kids determined to overcome the illness that threatened his life.
Tennis fans of all eras worldwide would be absolutely delighted. Laver is back coaching in Florida, something that seemed most unlikely when he suffered that stroke 8 months ago. But they would not be surprised. The modest Australian has been producing something special for most of his life. His recent recovery, another classic example.
He was obviously a great player, but I think what he brought to the game with being extremely humble, 2 Grand Slams, he's won a number of titles. He just, was a class act.
I feel greatly honored that Pete feels that I was a role model for, his game.
Laver, though, has a Grand Slam record unsurpassed. The only player to win the men's singles Grand Slam of all majors in 1 year, and he did it twice. David Fordham, 7 Nightly News.
And one game of soccer tonight, a very important one, with South Melbourne 2 beating Perth 1.
And also, very importantly, we've just heard in that you're going to be filling in for Fabio while he gets over his goose injuries.
I was going to say, as long as I don't end up like the goose or Fabio, I'll be happy. But nice attempt. April the 1st already.
Thank you, Paul. To the national weather now, and on the satellite map, no gooses, but scattered cloud bands extend, gooses, where did I get that from? The cloud bands extend back across South Australia into the west with local storm clouds in the tropics and northern inland of New South Wales. A change in the Tasman with a strong high in the Bight is producing southeasterly winds. In Cairns tomorrow, 31 degrees, a bit of rain about. Brisbane, 27 degrees and a little bit of cloud. In New South Wales, a few showers, maybe a storm in the northeast. Sydney, cloudy and 21. Canberra, cooler, 17. In Victoria, a shower or 2, 18 degrees, the top in Melbourne. Partly cloudy in Tassie with tops of 18 in Hobart, 19 in Launceston. Mainly fine in South Australia with a top temperature of 18 degrees in Adelaide. In WA, fine except for a shower or 2 in the north. Perth, a sunny 26 degrees. Kalgoorlie, partly cloudy, a bit cooler there, 21 degrees. In the Territory, a storm for Darwin, 31. And in the Alice, a cloudy 24. And that's all from the 7 Newsroom for now. Our next major bulletin, sunrise at 6 o'clock. I'm Chris Barth. Good night.